going to address the nation tomorrow night at 9 p.m. And it appears he will be announcing his surrender in his war in Iran after he made his own personal surrender as clear as he possibly could this evening.
Does Iran have to make a deal for the U.S. to end its operation in Iran? And have you spoken?
That is Donald Trump surrendering from the first objective he announced in his war 4 weeks ago, which was, remember, the words unconditional surrender, those two words. Unconditional surrender, of course, means, as we saw at the end of World War II, the surrendering country officially signing the surrender agreement, in which then both Germany and Japan at the end of World War II agreed to never fire a shot at the United States of America again and give the United States of America, in effect, complete control over their countries for the foreseeable future in 1945. That's what unconditional surrender was and is. Donald Trump quickly backed off his objective of unconditional surrender at the beginning of his war, within the first few days of his war, and to completely incomprehensible objectives, if there were any, that no one waging Donald Trump's war could ever explain to anyone. And when, much to Donald Trump's surprise and shock and amazement, Iran did the obvious in closing the Strait of Hormuz and shutting down 20% of the world's oil shipments, as well as crucial helium shipments and other important shipments through the strait, Donald Trump's new objective in his war became opening the Strait of Hormuz, that was closed only because of his war. Donald Trump kept threatening Iran with greater and greater versions of what he called obliterating Iran if Iran didn't open the Strait of Hormuz by a certain deadline, sometimes 2 days away, sometimes 5 days away. And as those deadlines approached, each one of them, Donald Trump, of course, as Wall Street expected and as Wall Street put it, chickened out. Wall Street is where the term taco was coined, meaning Trump always chickens out. And Donald Trump has, as Wall Street says, chickened out on every one of his ultimatums that he has issued to Iran in his war, including the one that he issued yesterday at 7:26 a.m. when Donald Trump said in writing for the world to see, if for any reason a deal is not shortly reached, which it probably will be, and if the Strait of Hormuz is not immediately open for business, we will conclude our lovely stay in Iran by blowing up and completely obliterating all of their electric generating plants, oil wells, and Karg Island, and possibly all desalinization plants. So there was Donald Trump threatening to commit war crimes by destroying life-sustaining civilian infrastructure. And he said he was going to do it immediately. That was his time frame, immediately. He said he was going to do it, quote, if the Hormuz Strait is not immediately open for business. For everyone else in the world, immediately means immediately. For Donald Trump, it means nothing, because as Wall Street knows, Trump always chickens out. So that was yesterday. The Strait of Hormuz has to be opened immediately. That was the objective, the full objective of Donald Trump's war yesterday. And this morning, when Donald Trump's Secretary of Defense was asked, quote, on the Strait of Hormuz, is opening the strait an essential objective? Pete Hegseth refused to answer the question in any way and wandered off talking about something else entirely. And then Donald Trump ended his day in a discussion with White House reporters after issuing a flagrantly unconstitutional and illegal executive order trying to seize control of mail-in balloting in American elections, which we will discuss later in this hour. Donald Trump said Iran doesn't have to do anything anymore. They don't have to do anything for him to end his war.
Does Iran have to make a deal for the U.S. to end its operation in Iran? And have you spoken?
As the stock market was sinking again today, Donald Trump desperately tried to get the word out through talks with individual reporters that he was going to end his war very soon. But when reporters got to question him this evening, he announced to the world that he was issuing his unconditional surrender on the opening of the Strait of Hormuz.
I think that the people understand it. We'll be leaving very soon, And if France or some other country wants to get oil or gas, they'll go up through the Strait and Hormuz Strait. They'll go right up there and they'll be able to fend for themselves. Look, problem with the Strait, a guy can take a mine, drop it in the water, and say, oh, it's unsafe. It's not like you're taking out an army or you're taking out a country or he can drop it. Or you can take a machine gun from the shore and shoot a few bullets at a ship. Or maybe an over-the-shoulder missile, small missiles. That's not for us. That'll be for France. That'll be for whoever's using the Strait. But I think when we leave, probably that's all cleared up.
No kidding. When you leave, Donald, the Strait of Hormuz will be all cleared up. As soon as you leave, you're the one who shut it down with your war, and you are the one who will open it up with your surrender in your war. This program has resisted the edge-of-the-seat coverage about every movement of each aircraft carrier that is headed to the Middle East, or the latest announcement of the number of troops being moved toward the Middle East, because those announcements have never once included the commitment of the kind of forces, the number of forces that would be needed to invade Iran. And no, 50,000 troops is not enough to invade a country of 91 million people. That's a little bit bigger than the New York City Police Department. So no, that's not enough. And Donald Trump knows that all those announcements he's made of troop movements are not enough. Iran knows that they're not enough. Donald Trump's defense secretary knows that. Moving 50,000 troops is a stunt so that Donald Trump can pretend, when reporters ask about what they like to call boots on the ground, that he has options when he does not have any options, and he knows it. And so Donald Trump pre-announced his surrender tonight with reporters when he also eliminated what has been the edge-of-the-seat speculation indulged in other corners of the news media about whether Donald Trump would send in soldiers and Marines to get in there and seize Iran's uranium stockpile so they won't ever have the raw material necessary again to make a nuclear weapon. And remember, Donald Trump's stated objective at the beginning of his war was that Iran would never, ever be able to have a nuclear weapon. And now Donald Trump has surrendered on that objective.
In a fairly short period of time, we'll be finished. They will not be able to do a nuclear weapon for years. And when they are ready, maybe in a long time from now, able to do a nuclear weapon, you'll have a president that will be like me in that he will go there and he'll knock the hell out of them again, because they cannot have a nuclear weapon.
Okay. So we've gone from unconditional surrender to some years from now, another president is going to have to do the same thing, and that other president will be just like me, Donald Trump. No, Donald, there will not be another president like you. And so Donald Trump is ending his war with, as was reasonably predicted here and elsewhere from the start of his war, absolutely nothing to show for it. The same crushing dictatorial regime is in place. And every single thing Donald Trump has done with Iran since he first became president has made the situation worse for the world and for the people of Iran. Secretary of State John Kerry negotiated the deal that Donald Trump has failed to negotiate with Iran, in which Iran put in writing that they would not develop a nuclear weapon. Secretary of State Kerry brought that deal back to President Obama, complete with a mechanism for monitoring that deal, thereby accomplishing the single greatest diplomatic negotiation of the nuclear age. A singular achievement in the history of foreign policy anywhere in the world. And Donald Trump ripped it up. The Kerry-Obama nuclear deal with Iran, co-signed by our oldest allies, France and the United Kingdom, along with Germany and China, and Russia. Yes, Russia. No one has been able to get all of those countries to agree on anything since then. And Donald Trump will never get those countries to agree on anything. The stock market and the price of gas have been in control of Donald Trump's war from the start. And so now, with the stock market suffering its worst quarter in 4 years, Donald Trump is doing a very good job of sounding like the hopeless loser of his own war. In a phone call with CBS earlier today, when he was asked about the possibility of somehow removing Iran's enriched uranium stockpile, which was an objective of his war, he actually said, "I don't even think about it. I just know that, that's so deeply buried, it's going to be very hard for anybody." First, it was an objective of Donald Trump's war. And then, in his surrender, "I don't even think about it." That is how a madman wages war in the 21st century. The material of war is the stuff of video games for these people, as the Trump team has made clear in their releases of demented videos of explosions in Iran mixed in with footage from Hollywood movies and football games, utterly goofy, childish stuff, only deliverable by the people who think war is some kind of game and that bombs and planes and helicopters are toys.
There was a viral video this week. I don't know if you saw it, of Army helicopters hovering near Kid Rock's house in Nashville. Did you see that video?
I didn't see it, no, but I'm sure they had a good time.
He's lying, of course. And of course, he did see it. And "I'm sure they had a good time" is the wrong answer for the misuse of Army helicopters at Kid Rock's house. Now watch Donald Trump, the slowest student in the room, after he figures out that that was the wrong answer.
Well, so the Army just said the crews of these helicopters have been suspended. What do you think of that?
Well, it depends. Are they? Well, they probably shouldn't have been doing it. Yes, you're not supposed to be playing games, right? But I'd take a look at it. They like Kid Rock. I like Kid Rock. Maybe they were trying to defend him. I don't know.
So, the commander-in-chief of the American Armed Forces says he does not know if Army helicopters under his command were at Kid Rock's house to defend Kid Rock. And you have your choice here. In Donald Trump's answer, he was telling the truth, in which case he is unfit for the presidency, or for even being given the keys to a car. Or Donald Trump was doing his pathological lying as usual, in which case he is unfit for the presidency. The country is at war. Donald Trump's war and his military helicopters are playing games at Kid Rock's house, and he pretends that he doesn't know about it, and then he says he doesn't care. Or he really doesn't know about it at all. Also today, in the fourth week of Donald Trump's war, the war he cares about less than any wartime president in American history has ever cared about war, Donald Trump suffered a series of important defeats by federal judges, including a federal judge in Washington, D.C., issuing a 35-page opinion stopping Donald Trump's building of a ballroom on the White House grounds. This evening, Donald Trump was asked about that. But it was in one of those White House reporter questions that always asks at least two things at once. The first part of the question was about the possibility of Donald Trump's war ending soon, which seems like the most important question of the day with Donald Trump's war raging. And the second part of the question was about the thing Donald Trump cares about now more than anything else in the world.
After you said today that the Iran war may be ending soon, the stock market closed much higher. Do you have thoughts on that? And also, a judge just ordered you to stop construction of the ballroom. Are you planning to stop?
Well, we'll appeal that, but it's not. I don't know. It's basically. I mean, I wrote it, a part of his opinion, but basically he's saying I need congressional approval, and he's so wrong.
And he went on for 6 minutes and 40 seconds, his longest answer of the day, and he never said a word about the first part of that question about his war in Iran.
The glass, it's bulletproof and it's ballistic proof. It's very thick. It's like that. And it's going 45 feet high, and every window is covered, every door is covered. The roof is drone proof. We have secure air handling systems. You know, bad things happen in the air if you have bad people. We have bio defense all over. We have secure telecommunications and communications all over. We have bomb shelters that we're building. We have a hospital and very major medical facilities that we're building. We have all of these things.
That's all under the ballroom. Seems to care about that a lot more than he cares about any member of the American military who might be in harm's way tonight in his war. And he gave a new reason for building the ballroom, saying the United States of America needs to build what Donald Trump calls the biggest ballroom in the world for the King of England.
It's a wet area. They used to call it a wetland, but I guess they don't do that for the White House, but it's essentially a wetland. And when it rains, you're in trouble. The water can go up to 3 to 4 inches over their shoes. That's not a good feeling for who was Prince Charles, who will be here next couple of weeks, is King Charles, who's a great guy. We don't want him to sit in a pool of water.
That's the man who's waging war in Iran, the hallucinator in chief. Kings, as it happens, have managed to visit the White House many, many times without ever once sitting in a pool of water. Donald Trump is demonstrably mentally incompetent to be president of the United States or to perform any serious adult function. He proves that in new ways every day. And he finally is proving to more Trump voters every day that he has been lying to them from the start. Scott McConnell, the founder, along with Pat Buchanan, of the American Conservative in 2002, tweeted today, so ashamed and embarrassed to have voted 3 times for this person. What provoked this particular tweet at that moment was Eric Trump's tweet about Palm Beach International Airport now being officially defaced with the name President Donald J. Trump International Airport. In an article published today, Scott McConnell wrote, quote, Trump's successful effort to present himself as the peace candidate and my enthusiasm for his endeavor. Scott McConnell is now in the huge majority of people who, polls show, disapprove of Donald Trump's work as president and Donald Trump's war, and is now, as he put it, so ashamed and embarrassed that he ever voted for Donald Trump. That was true of Nixon voters, who were nowhere to be found just a few years after Richard Nixon was forced to resign the presidency in the middle of his second term. Nixon won 49 states in his reelection in 1972, and by 1976, you couldn't find anyone who voted for him. People just wouldn't admit it anywhere. Anyone who lived through that period can tell you. Millions and millions and millions of people felt what Scott McConnell now feels. They felt so ashamed and embarrassed that they voted for Richard Nixon for president. And so we have a right to hope tonight that shame and embarrassment will guide Scott McConnell and millions of other voters like him to more discerning choices the next time they are in a voting booth or filling out their mail-in ballot at home, which Donald Trump has tried to seize control of tonight with an executive order about mail-in ballots. Donald Trump's war on mail-in ballots is a more important war to him than his war in Iran. Donald Trump's war on mail-in ballots is a war on democracy here in the United States. And he spent today issuing his preliminary statements about surrender in his war in Iran. At the same time, he launched a new attack tonight in his war on democracy in the United States, giving Trump voters even more to be ashamed and embarrassed about. Leading off our discussion tonight is Democrat Congressman Adam Smith of Washington State. He is the top Democrat on the House Armed Services Committee. Congressman Smith, it sure sounds like at 9 o'clock tomorrow night, we're going to hear the President of the United States explain why he's leaving Iraq and probably leaving out a bunch of the objectives that he's mentioned along the way.
Yeah. No,
I think I said Iraq. I mean Iran.
You meant Iran, yeah. No, it's a very disturbing moment because he decides to stop, and we're not actually in Iran, of course, we're bombing Iran. So what he really means to say is we're going to stop bombing Iran. And maybe he says that, but then where are we? we are worse off than when we started, and that's not even counting the costs of this war. The 13 service members killed, the hundreds wounded, the thousands of civilians killed, the impact on the global economy, one more severe fracture to our alliance, as we saw NATO country after NATO country, abandoning Trump's war today. So I don't know what he's going to say. Now, as you know, I mean, gosh, you've seen throughout this war, up, down, all over, sideways. You did a great job of summarizing that. But it sure seems like he's going to admit what all of us knew from the start, which was there was no point in starting this in the first place, and he's stopping it now.
He kept saying from the start, he said he could open the Strait of Hormuz immediately. He first challenged tankers and other ships just to go through, just to be brave and go through. Right. Of course, that was an insane suggestion that no one took. And now he's just giving up, saying in effect, he said repeatedly today, we can't do it.
The other thing he said today, which was interesting, is he said, look, we're not that dependent upon the Strait of Hormuz. Other countries are dependent on it. You want your oil, you go get your oil. You didn't help us, we're not going to help you. It's like what those countries would say, hey, we had our oil before you came in and started blowing things up across the Middle East and shut it down. So maybe don't do that, and that will get us to the place that we want to be at. But it's really important also on the nuclear thing. Understand, we are no closer today to reducing Iran's ability to develop a nuclear weapon than we were on the day that he started this war. And you left out one of his better quotes on that, where he said at one point in this, look, I started this war because Iran was going to have a nuclear weapon. He even said at one point, and I think it was just him talking, they would have used it by now.
Yes.
They would have used it by now.
Yeah.
Which is really, really stupid, because obviously that wasn't going to happen. But he fought the war supposedly because of all of that. And he's no closer now, after all of that destruction, after all of that money, after all of those deaths, after all of that disruption of the global economy. Not only is he not closer to reducing Iran's nuclear program, but Iran now has a greater incentive than ever to try to rush forward and build one because of the existential threat that he has presented to their regime. This war is an utter disaster, and I hope that people don't forget this and make him own this complete failure.
And the person, Donald Trump, person who waged this war, also, during his war, allowed sanctioned Iranian oil to be sold and sanctioned Russian oil to be sold, which would not be able to be on the market if he hadn't started his war.
Yeah, he gave Iran $14 billion, or somewhere between 10 and $15 billion. And we all remember how the Republicans lost their minds when there was $400 million that Iran was going to get. I think it was from South Korea. It was basically deals that had been made before the sanctions had been put in place, at least, and they said this was the greatest betrayal our country had ever seen. And I can't do the math off the top of my head, but how much more 15 billion is than 400 million? Yeah, no, I mean, and this is what happens when you don't think, when you don't plan, when you simply react when you know it in your bones and you use your gut instead of your, well, I was going to say your intelligence. That's the wrong thing to say here about Trump. Your advisors, the people at the Pentagon, the other people who actually know and care about consequences of actions, not just acting and hoping for the best, but understand the consequences. Trump did not understand that.
Congressman Adam Smith, thank you for starting us off tonight. You're going to be coming back when the Democrats win the House. You're the chairman of the Armed Services Committee, and this administration is going to be coming to you to authorize the rebuilding of these stockpiles of weapons that they've burnt off in this war. This is going to be a long aftermath. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Coming up was, as I've said, a very, very bad day in court for Donald Trump, and with a federal judge ruling that he can be sued for the January 6th attack on the Capitol, another judge ruling that Donald Trump's executive order denying funding to PBS and NPR is unconstitutional, and, of course, a federal judge stopping Donald Trump from building what he calls the biggest ballroom in the world. All of that is next with Senator Sheldon Whitehouse. It was a very, very bad day for Donald Trump in court today. The latest tonight is a federal judge ruling that Donald Trump is not immune from being sued for the attack on the Capitol on January 6, 2021, sued by members of Congress and Capitol police officers who were victims of that attack. Judge Amit Mehta applied the Supreme Court's immunity ruling in Donald Trump's criminal cases and still found enough of Donald Trump's conduct as described in the civil lawsuit to be outside of official presidential duties. and that the lawsuits can continue against Donald Trump for January 6th. Also today, another federal judge stopped the construction of Donald Trump's White House adjacent ballroom, saying that only Congress can approve such construction and that the president is not the owner of the White House, but merely the steward. And the day began with a federal judge ruling that Donald Trump's executive order barring federal funding of NPR and PBS is unconstitutional. Joining us now is Democratic Senator Sheldon Whitehouse of Rhode Island. He's a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee and the Senate Finance Committee. Senator, let's go to the one that's closest to Donald Trump's heart, which is the ballroom, and a federal judge, in a long opinion, saying you're not the owner of this place, you are just the steward.
Yeah, he's an occupant. He's like a tenant. The voters put him in there for his term of office, but that doesn't mean he gets to destroy the place like any tenant gets to destroy the home of the landlord that they're renting. And Congress is where you go for authority to make changes in the building. It's the people of the United States through Congress that are the owner of that building. So that was, you're right. I think that was probably a tough one for him, but he has not had a good week either. He lost the January 6th suit. He lost the ballroom suit. He lost the public broadcasting suit. He lost the Voice of America suit. He lost the Anthropic AI suit. And he lost the Department of Defense press policy suit. And these weren't just arguments where the judges said, you know, we've come down on the other side. They actually threw arguments out using words like pretextual, which is a real danger sign for the government, because that imputes bad faith to the argument, bad faith to the government making the argument. So with all of these losses and with that kind of language, Trump is in a real danger zone.
So in the January 6th case, Donald Trump's lawyers actually tried to use rappers as Donald Trump's defense. Now, they came up with a theoretical rapper, as lawyers sometimes do come up with theoretical examples. And it was the idea of it. They presented to the judge in their brief a theoretical rapper known for provocative and controversial lyrics, which might describe explicit violent acts. And how, you know, if that's allowed, then of course Donald Trump can say whatever he wants in his speech at the Ellipse, telling people to go to the Capitol and fight like hell. The judge responds to that by saying, but here is what is missing from the president's hypothetical. There is no contention that for weeks before the concert, the rapper told his fans and that the establishment had taken something valuable from them through fraud and deceit. No assertion that the rapper knew his fans had prepared to act violently on that very day, including by bringing weapons to the show to reclaim what was taken from them. And so there's the judge finding that lawsuit can go forward.
And the crusher for Trump is going to be that he and other relevant witnesses, like Rudy Giuliani and the folks in the Beast driving him that day, are potential witnesses. And in a civil proceeding, you can be deposed. You can be sat down at a table and forced to answer questions under oath. And if you lie, there are sanctions for lying under oath. And you're subject to cross-examine by good, smart lawyers who know the facts. And that is an environment in which Trump is going to do terribly. So I don't know what they're going to do by way of getting rid of this case. But if I were Trump's lawyer, I would do everything possible to make sure he did not have to go through a deposition, because he would almost inevitably lie.
And those are videotaped depositions now in cases like this. And the only way
public.
Yes, but the only way out of it would be to somehow settle, to somehow say to the plaintiffs in the case, the members of Congress, the Capitol Police, here's how many millions of dollars I will give you.
Which he would like to do with this Department of Justice, which loves to give away money to help him, even if there's not a real case. They just gave away over $1 million to Mike Flynn, for instance. And so the sort of, sue and settle deal for giving money away to Trump supporters with settlements, they call them, I'll put that in air quotes, It's kind of an established thing. And so I know he would like to go to Pam Bondi and say, well, let's go to the U.S. Treasury and have the taxpayers